you start a business, you're going to fail a lot. And that's just the reality of starting a business. You're not going to have a lot of wins. It's something that you have to have consistency with. We have to retrain our mind as to what that actually is. And for what failure actually is a stepping stone to your success.
Hey, Celeste, I am excited to have you join me for this episode of Coffee with Closers.
Hi, I'm glad to be here. I'm super excited. Thanks for having me on.
Most certainly. Well, every time I have an entrepreneur, I have to ask them, like, how did they get started? You seem very, very young in your career
Mhm.
and have an entrepreneurial journey that you started very early on. You and I were just talking prior to the episode started that you started thinking about entrepreneurship and business in high school age.
Mhm.
Certainly, you don't look all that old either. So clearly, you are kind of fresh and young at this journey. So tell us a little bit about your journey as becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm 24 years old. So yes, I'm still very, fairly young. Yeah, my entrepreneurial journey really started kicking off kind of, I would say, high school. And so at my middle school, they actually added a STEM building. In my senior year, that's when it actually went live so kids could work in that STEM building. And they had this incubator program. And they basically had business owners from within our community come in and teach children for the whole semester, basically. And basically, we were put in groups of 4 to 5 kids, and we'd have to develop either a product or service. And then at the end of that semester, we were actually pitching it to some of these teachers. So, I just fell in love with the whole idea of entrepreneurship then, because to be quite frank, everything else in high school was just kind of not, it wasn't sticking, like I was in French and show choir and gym and, all sorts of math, all of it, but nothing ever really sticked up until that moment. So it was my senior year going into college, and good thing it actually ended up working out really well, because then in college I was like, okay, marketing, business, that's my forte. Did all that and graduated and have had a couple marketing jobs, growing my knowledge base even after college, just really loving marketing, like having a big passion for it. So I just continued my education, reading, learning, taking courses, all that good stuff. So yeah, like last year, I actually got certified as a Christian life coach, because that is another big part of who I am, is I am a Christian. And after that certification, all these girls were like, okay, we got certified. How do we actually start working with our ideal target market, right? And so me having this marketing background, that's how the Commendable Kind was developed. It's been a journey. Everything's been divine, and I'm just excited. I'm fresh off the press, so I'm really excited.
Yeah, so obviously you've had some exposure and got the taste or the entrepreneurial bug, right,
Yeah.
in early days in high school,
Mhm.
and then in college too. You kind of kept that desire going. So were you running some of the business ideas, or were you doing anything entrepreneurial during
Yeah, I
college
was.
days?
I had a couple businesses. I'd say the main business that in college specifically, I started a clothing line to bring awareness to people who were undergoing domestic abuse. That was really near and dear to my heart, because I had a lot of friends, a lot of family members who sadly experienced domestic abuse. So to me, I wanted to do something creative, but also like be a part of something that was serious. Because even in college, I was a part of Business Incubator Entrepreneurship Club. So I was very much active in those programs. And that's kind of the business that I was doing up until I met this one girl. And she came to me, she's like, Celeste, what happens if we develop an app and it's only good news? Like, as you know, we have a problem with the news being really negative. It's kind of stirring up. And to me, I just think it's because the world is really just revolves around money and profit, unfortunately. So I think, but that's a conversation honestly for another day. But when it came to this app idea, we really took it seriously and actually pursued it. But, one thing led to another, college got more harder, classes got more serious. So we ended up dissolving the business. We didn't really do much with it. So ever since then, I've just been working and been just trying to figure myself out. And then literally last year was when I actually decided to pursue this thing with the Commendable Kind.
Yeah, so can you tell our audience a little bit about what is Commendable Kind?
Yeah, so the Commendable Kind is a business that helps faith based female entrepreneurs build successful and profitable, scalable brands. So, the reason why it's so near and dear to me is because I love marketing and I have an extensive marketing when it comes to marketing, but also when it comes to mindset. For me, this idea of infusing faith based principles with your mindset and living a certain lifestyle and having morals and this standard and this belief and kind of like infusing that with marketing just really is super near and dear to my heart. So, that's basically what the Commendable Kind is.
So can we elaborate on that? Because obviously, what do you mean by faith based?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up a Christian. I was baptized at the age of 9. And so for me, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. And I will say, when I was about 21, I was like re-saved in a way. The Lord came to me after just the course of life. Sometimes things take hard lefts and we get in situations and we just go through life and things can be really negative. But there was a really bad season of my life that I was in, and the Lord, you could say, just kind of got me out of it. And you know what? I really want to dedicate my life to the Lord. I want to dedicate like who I am to the Lord. I think, and we can go a little bit deeper. So with social media, there's no really regulations on social media. It was kind of like this thing that came out, and all of a sudden, a lot of great things happened, but also a lot of negative repercussions came from it as well. One of those things being anxiety, comparison, depression. A lot of girls, especially my age and men my age too, and older, younger, deal with this social media, seeing what other people have, not being grateful for what they do have. So for me, I recognize that being a Christian is about being a part of something greater than yourself. It's about giving back, being connected to the Holy Spirit inside of you, and, being a part of the kingdom of God and being a vessel for Jesus Christ. It's this idea of Jesus died and your old self died with him, but then he rose 3 days later, and like you are new in Jesus. And this whole, my belief in that is so strong, and I tie that to social media in a way with my business, because there's so many women my age who are just kind of struggling and they don't know what to do with their life, and they have no purpose, they don't have a direction, they don't have, if you listen to everything, you will stand for nothing. Something like that. And basically what that means is, if you're going to listen to just everything out there and take everything out there and want to ingest it and not have a filter, then you'll never draw your foot in the sand and actually stand for something. And that's something I actually experienced. I was very naive, and as a kid, I got into the wrong crowd at a young age because of my own insecurities and how I was shaped by society. And there's just a lot of people my age and younger who are going through very similar situations in their life. And so the Commendable Kind is not just when it comes to faith, but for business as well. It's an outlet for these women to be able to build something, have purpose, do something with their lives that's actually going to fulfill them at a young age. Because let's be honest, a career is actually a big part of your life, and you're going to be spending a majority of your time doing something. Yeah, there's this, I could keep going on, but there's a lot.
Makes sense. And you mentioned, the faith-based principles that applies to business. Can you give some examples of what some of those are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say one of these principles could be this idea of failure, right? So this idea of failure, when you start a business, you're going to fail a lot. And that's just the reality of starting a business. You're not going to have a lot of wins. It's something that you have to have consistency with. So if we were to apply that to our faith, we know that the Holy Spirit is with us, we know that Jesus is with us, but it may not feel like it, right? And if we understand that, hey, things may not always go our way, but we have a God who loves us, and more than that, is going to support us and hold our hand in the wilderness, everything's going to be okay. And this kind of that same principle can be applied to business, in the sense of, you're going to have a wilderness season in your business. You're not going to have the success that you want. And honestly, we could take it a step further and even talk about finances. A big part of the time when you're starting a business, you're actually going to be investing and losing a lot of your finances before you actually start making that money back. It's almost like going through life in terms of being a follower of Jesus, and no matter what the circumstances are, you don't blame Jesus for it, right? You're grateful, and it's almost like this practice of gratitude and being completely just happy, and kind of retraining your mind, even when bad things happen, to still be grateful, to still hold on to what is true, what is good. And same in business, right? When you start a business, not everything is going to go your way. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, but staying true to why you even started the business, right? Your mission is rooted in other people. I like to say a business is, you want to solve a problem for a community, right? So when it comes to your faith, when it comes to business, those things are kind of intertwined, because your mission should be to always want to help other people.
So obviously your business is helping other faith-minded, faith-based women with a similar mindset and belief system, right? So what are some of the commonality that you saw in those sort of women who are starting or running businesses like that today?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I would say some of the commonalities is that they have this idea that social media is the be-all thing. If they just post on social media, then they could go viral. And I'm not dissing that. Of course you can go viral. There is virality, but 9 times out of 10, these women, they don't have have a marketing background and the only thing that they know how to do is like, I'm going to make a YouTube channel or an Instagram account and not do any other marketing. So because there's a lot of women who are like that, that's where I come in and I'm like, yes, but there's also like SEO, for example, and all of these other things like growing an email list that you can do to grow your business other than just posting on social media. So that's definitely one of them. And then it's a mindset thing with them as well, because the beauty about Christian women is they're doing it for the right reason, because they have I like to say they've activated the Holy Spirit inside of them. Their values and their morals have shifted, and they have a higher calling other than just pleasing themselves. Like they really want to be a vessel for good and help other people. But a lot of them, in a sense, they're just kind of naive to the fact of marketing because they just don't have that background. A lot of Christian women that I know are like mothers or very creative fields. It's like when it comes to marketing, they're just kind of like, what do I do? And then post on social media.
Understood. So a lot of it is just the early days of building a business, not very familiar with how to actually promote their brand, promote their business, and then just assuming that just posting on social media is sufficient enough to get them the kind of customer or the reach that they're looking for.
Yeah.
And then what is kind of the journey that you're mapping out for these people in terms of getting them from where they are and trying, helping them to get to where they're trying to go to?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So there's actually a whole bunch of things. So our startup course is the course that I am developing to actually, it's more of the technicalities of how do I actually grow my email list, SEO, all of these things, run paid ads, all of that. So that's one avenue. And then another avenue, our Discord channel. So essentially what I love about Discord is you could have these different channels, and one channel is like prayer room. Another channel is like testimonies where women can share, what they've gone through. Another woman channel could be free weekly business coaching. Another channel is like, free resources. And so having that community, allowing them to connect with one another, we're able to like pray into each other and really help each other in that sense. And then also too, we're big on our blogs. So I really love blogging because you really have that transformational education, as well as YouTube as well. That is something I actually really want to start very soon. I actually am planning on starting, is kind of being one of these spokeswomen in the space, just because even if you take out Christianity and you're looking in the mindset space, there's not a lot of women kind of speaking on these topics, but also, kind of infusing Christian-based messages could be a great thing, because I mean there's tons of Christian women looking for this type of information. I've even had people on my blog message me and be like, do you know any communities of Christian women? And yeah, there's some on Facebook here and there, but at the end of the day, like there really hasn't been someone to take hold of it and actually grow it and make it into the community that it deserves. So those are just some avenues, ways in which I connect with these women, and it's been phenomenal so far.
So obviously, you're young in business, you're age-wise, you're pretty young, right? And you're also at the same time advising other people who might be much more older than you and probably are much farther along in their life. And how are you overcoming kind of the age objection sometimes in terms of, hey, how are you qualified enough to provide recommendations or guidance or direction on business and marketing and whatnot?
Yeah, wonderful question. So, to be honest, I haven't really gotten a lot of that kickback yet, but I'm sure that as I grow and there's more eyeballs on the Commendable Kind, that will come up. And what I will say to that, it's not so much about your age as it is about your experience. For example, you could have someone who's like 15 years old who's gone through like just like a whole life and be more mature versus a 45-year-old who, just kind of partied their whole life and didn't, really do anything too serious. So when it comes to age, for me, it's like, what do you know, right? I'm more interested in what you know. And fortunately for me, I'm just a part of like so many women's lives who are actually a lot older than me. Like I will say a lot of my friends, they're like 30 years old. They're just older than me, and it's like they have so much humility. And I I hope as I meet more women in my market, the people I'm trying to serve, that they're like that. But if that objective does come up, it's like, fortunately, I've had marketing jobs in the past. I have a great job now. I'm actually like marketing director, so I assist the whole marketing department for my company. And yeah, there's people who are a lot older than me, and there's people who are younger than me. And so it's really about what you know at the end of the day.
So obviously you've learned a lot, right? You have had opportunity from a very young age to be part of business incubators, and you've also gone to college. But what are some other mediums that you'll be leveraging to learn and consume information? And not only that, to actually apply that
Absolutely.
knowledge?
Yeah. So I read a lot of books. I love reading. I think reading is probably one of the most exciting things you can do for your brain, because when you're constantly feeding yourself like new information, it's just one of the best feelings in the world. I will also say that mentorships are a big thing. So, and this is just advice for anyone out there who is looking to get into the business world. Getting a mentor of some kind, even if they're not, a million steps ahead, even if they're only like a couple steps ahead of you. Really having someone there to be like, oh no, this is going to work, or no, maybe you should be thinking about things in this way, can really fast forward your learning curve. I would say for me as well, courses. So I actually invest a lot of money into courses. Knowledge is power at the end of the day. So I would say that after college too, it's really interesting because when I was in college, I learned a lot, but there were some teachers, there were some professors who weren't really, I would say, equipped to teach the class. And to this day, it's like, I don't like, why was that even necessary almost? But it's interesting because after college, that's when I was really like, okay, like I want to continue my education. And I don't mean like go get a master's or anything. It's more like, no, I want to continue investing my money into these courses, into books, and just really expanding what I know. So those are the other mediums I use.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm certainly trying to get my children to understand that concept, and I think college is definitely overrated, and sometimes I don't think it's necessary unless you're trying to be a brain surgeon
Mhm.
or architect, and or some sort of a sophisticated engineering job.
Yeah.
I don't know if college is necessarily a requirement, and I think there's a lot of great books that can teach you principles in life and business that can probably accelerate your knowledge and expertise and experience much farther along than 4 or 5 years of college degree and tens and thousands of dollars in in debt. And I also believe that the self learning is an amazing skill to acquire, because if you can teach yourself anything, right, that's just it's there's nothing like that, because you can pretty much learn any skill that you need to make yourself more valuable
Yes.
for the society, right? And then you're able to contribute more to the society as well.
Absolutely, 100%. I 100% agree. I remember because my parents, they're just from a different generation, right? And we're
Hmm.
different people. And so, for my parents, they were always like, no, you have to go to college. My dad actually on their side, they all went to college back ever since the 1800s, like that
Hmm.
far. So for me, I had this pressure growing up where it was like, if you go to college, if you don't go to a college, we'll disown you. Essentially, was
Hmm.
kind of how I grew up feeling, essentially. So when I went to college, fortunately, I did have that incubator class. So I was, in a way, I felt like there was more direction in terms of what I wanted to do going into college because of that. But essentially, I agree. If your child, and this is how I want to raise my kids too, like if children want to grow up and they're young and they're like, you know what, I want to explore, music or this or that or whatever it may be, they should have the resources and the opportunity to do that, because at the end of the day, college, it really comes down to the professors at the end of the day, and not every class is going to have what you need to be equipped that's actually going to advance you in your life. So yeah, just I'm the same way. For me, it's like whenever I have kids, it's not like college isn't going to be like a requirement.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that.
Yeah,
So some people may disagree with me on it, but I'm holding to my my
me
beliefs
too.
there. So obviously, you touched on the concept of failure, and you believe, based on your faith, that failure sometimes is the actual way of depending on God and trusting in His ways, and not necessarily just treating that as a negative experience
Hmm.
and learning from it,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And then certainly you're still very young, and you've had maybe one or two failure, like you said, the app company that you started build, and
Hmm.
then it wasn't able to take off ground.
Hmm.
So, what are some other lessons learned through failure in the last year or so that you've been trying to build this company?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's actually back in 20, so it was actually during the pandemic, a year after 2021, I had this opportunity to move out on the West Coast. I lived in Las Vegas and I was working at this like pre-IPO firm. And I actually ended up starting a business with a couple of my friends, and it was a marketing agency whilst also working this job. And so growing a marketing agency, like when, yes, you have a little bit of marketing experience, but of course, just you're still starting from like the ground zero. Took a lot of failures, a lot of failures. I mean, just little things like, trying to find the right providers, how to talk to people, just learning like the ins and outs of the space, you could say. There was like a lot of, little things and some big things here and there. But I just remember there was a point where just taking that much pressure and putting that much pressure on myself. I was putting so much pressure on myself where it was like, oh, if I don't do this, then I'm not gonna like live the life that I want or this or that. And I'll say like a lot of people, if, when it comes to failure, we have to retrain our mind as to what that actually is. And for what failure actually is a stepping stone to your success. It's not, something that's going to prolong your life. The more failures, the better, because the more you learn, the more likely you're going to actually be able to get that win, right? So I just remember during this time period, and it was like I was putting all this pressure on myself, and I just really was feeling like the weight of the world. But then I just remember, like, when I continued to learn and like immerse myself in books, and I tried and I kept trying and I kept trying, I realized after some time, like, hey, this is just a part of the game. Like, and it doesn't matter what space you're in, marketing or whatever else. Like, at the end of the day, think of like a basketball player, right? Like, they have to be practicing year after year after year, put that 10,000 plus hours in. And so essentially, I really hope to see a generation where, and just people in general, where they can stop seeing failure as that negative thing that's pushing them away from their success. I think that's also like societal conditioning as well. We see in movies and we're told like, oh, it's a bad thing to fail, but the reality is it's the opposite. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's all about, like you said, mindset and perspective as well, right? And obviously, you as an entrepreneur and trying to do coaching, and you're creating course, and you're also trying to build this email list and creating a YouTube channel, and all of these things that you're trying to do. Certainly, there's a lot on your plate, right? And then you're managing these Discord communities and all those things. How are you able to prioritize and get more of what you need to get done?
Great question. So, yeah, I feel like I've actually been learning a lot recently about this. And it's, stop putting the pressure on yourself. And hey, like, listen, you can have a to do list, but we got to stop putting so much pressure on ourselves to get everything done during a certain amount of time. And I think, and this is also where like my faith gets tied back into it. Cause, as Christians, it's like, like our abundance is coming. And if we believe in that and we stay true to that, it will come, right? But that can't be the end goal at the same time. It has to be about the journey. It's about how we're being shaped. In First James, there's a verse, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't know it word for word, but it says, be glad for and rejoice in the trials and errors, trials and tribulations, because from that you're going to produce perseverance, and perseverance is going to produce character, and character is essentially what we all need to grow up into the people that we want to become, our higher selves. We have to have a time period, being refined, you could say. So for me, I think that refining process really does tie into, allowing yourself grace. You just have to have grace for yourself, just like you give grace to other people. You have to allow yourself to be like, okay, yeah, I can have this to do list, but if I don't get all this stuff done, it's okay. I'm going to try again tomorrow. And another thing, too, that I have a lot of friends that do this, where they will have an Excel sheet and they'll be like, okay, what did I do good this week? Okay, and what can I improve on? And when they're looking at that stuff where it's like, what can I improve on? They're not being negative about themselves. They're not like, oh, darn it. Like, no, they're like, they love themselves, including myself. Like, I love myself. And it's like, okay, this is what I could just improve on. Improvement is just like recognizing what failures are, essentially. So yeah, that definitely applies to work. It's just about giving yourself that grace and being, gentle with yourself, and knowing that you are actually working your way to your higher self, but you're not going to get there overnight. So yeah.
Most certainly. Obviously, you're still pretty young in life, but if you had to tell your younger self, what advice would you give the younger Celeste?
It's a great question. What advice would I give my younger self? Probably, oh man, probably don't care so much about what other people think of you. I think when we're young, it's so easy to tie our happiness to just lies from society, you could say. Because we grow up watching movies, we grow up having certain friends, we grow up hearing, our parents talk to each other and just other people. And we just grow up in this noise essentially. And we start to tie our happiness to, external things. And then I would also say to my younger self, focus on Jesus, because he died on the cross for my sins. He died while I am still a sinner. Like, I'm not perfect by no means, by no stretch of the imagination. So have faith in, don't put all of my faith in people, but to put faith in Jesus, and to focus on your purpose and focus on actually doing something that's bigger than yourself, essentially.
Awesome. Yeah. What a great way to end our conversation, Celeste. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was amazing. Glad that I was able to be on your show.
This episode of Coffee with Closers is brought to you by One IMS, a leading digital marketing agency helping businesses win new customers. To request a free marketing ROI audit, please visit oneims.com. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.